Mark Montebello on behalf of Philosophy Sharing. The Philosophy Sharing Foundation set up this meeting today fully conscious of its intellectual and social responsibilities. The meeting satisfies its declared mission. That is, first, to bring together philosophy enthusiasts, second, to inspire, strengthen and promote philosophical activity in the Maltese Islands, and thirdly, to contribute towards society through philosophy. In so doing, the Foundation reaffirms most strongly one of its fundamental policies, namely that it does not adhere or profess any single creed or ideology. Some of us may not agree with what Mr. Lowell is generally thought to stand for. This, we maintain, does not preclude him or anyone else from taking part in philosophical debate. It is a matter of principle. Allow me to make the Foundation's position perfectly clear here. The Foundation is conscious of the fact that Mr. Lowell has been found guilty by the courts of racist incitement and hate talk. Whatever the case, the Foundation cannot agree with any form of racism, intolerance or disrespect. It cannot agree with any sort of political position or policy which is based on some racist or discriminatory premise. It would contradict its founding principles if it did so. I personally would add that racism has no philosophical basis, that it is a flawed argument, that its conclusions are illogical. In having Mr. Lowell, however, as its guest tonight, the Foundation, it does not mean that the Foundation endorses Mr. Lowell's philosophical or political views. That, for argument's sake, it approves of whatever lifestyle he lives, or that it encourages him to persist in any unreasonable position he may adhere to. Throughout the last 4 years since the Foundation's establishment, the Foundation has not done anything of the sort with any guest it invited to contribute to its activities and mission, and it shall not begin doing so tonight, nor shall it do so in the future. This is not a political meeting. We are not interested in Mr. Lowell's political positions, however relevant they might be. We welcome Mr. Lowell to share his philosophical views, and we trust that a good-natured and sensible discussion shall follow. Mr. Lowell is a writer and head of a local political party. Today he shall be talking to us about the philosophy of Nietzsche. Mr. Lowell.
Let me assure the Reverend Mark Montebello at the very outset that my talk today will not be exactly similar to the speeches I normally give. And to make sure of that, to make sure I stay with the script, I'll put on my reading spectacles. Hopefully, they'll give me a more professorial look as well. So, the philosophy of Nietzsche. More people, including young people, are becoming avid readers and students of Friedrich Nietzsche. And let's face it, who wouldn't be interested in a philosopher who states man should be trained for war, women for the recreation of the warrior. All right. I discovered Nietzsche at 21, reading Zarathustra, and I remember I underwent a catharsis, weeping openly, with book in hand one sunny summer afternoon in a quasi-deserted Selmoon Bay. I was so shaken, my interest so aroused, that I started a correspondence lasting some 3 or 4 years with Professor Hollingdale, Manchester University, who translated Zarathustra. Those of you who remember Penguin Classics, very good rendition. Now he told everyone to switch off, and of course mine is still on. I can't switch it off, I'm sorry. I'm a technical idiot, you see. Professor Hollingdale is an authority on Nietzsche, and he wrote that lovely, delightful book, Friedrich Nietzsche, The Man and His Philosophy, which not only gives an overview of Nietzsche's philosophy, but also his life as a human being. His student days, his travels, his enemies, those who supported him because he had some loyal friends, his health problems, his love affairs, and so on and so forth. So it's a really, really good book which I recommend. Friedrich Nietzsche, The Man and His Philosophy by Hollingdale. Now he, Hollingdale, is or was an acclaimed authority on Nietzsche, and he told me in one of his letters that when reading Nietzsche, one should start with Zarathustra and not read Nietzsche chronologically in the order he wrote his books. And the reason is that Zarathustra gives the impetus, the enthusiasm to go on reading him, for Nietzsche is a lifetime study. Now, one understands Nietzsche intuitively. One grasps immediately a Ferrari, or not at all, a question of mental attunement. He seemingly contradicts himself on every page, but there is method, loads of method in the madness. Nietzsche was a brilliant philologist, or in modern terms, the study of the classics, with an intimate grasp of ancient Greek, Latin, and a thorough knowledge of the Hindu texts. He was given the chair of philology at Basel University when only 24, without undergoing the usual examination. When Nietzsche met Wagner, the composer really wanted a sycophant, someone totally dedicated to him, a great writer who would wax lyrical about him and his music. And Nietzsche dedicated his first book, the Geburt der Tragödie, the birth of a tragedy out of the spirit of music, I'll come to this, to Wagner. The book is a eulogy of Wagner and his music, in which Nietzsche saw a pre-Christian ideal and a return to classical Greek tragedy. Nietzsche's first book, The Geburt, 1872, marked his emancipation from the trappings of classical scholarship. A speculative rather than an exegetical or analytical work. It argued that Greek tragedy arose out of a fusion of what he termed Apollonian and Dionysian elements. The former representing measure, restraint, harmony, and the latter unbridled passion. Nietzsche argued that Socratic rationalism and optimism spelled the death of Greek tragedy. Socrates killed the ancient Greek gods, as, after all, Nietzsche did. He killed the Christian God. Much as he criticized Socrates, Nietzsche followed his footsteps. For he too killed our gods, our idols. The final 10 sessions of the book, the Geburt, are a rhapsody about the rebirth of tragedy from the spirit of Wagner's music. This section Nietzsche regretted for the rest of his life that he had ever written. I'll tell you why. So, Apollo is the craftsman form, while Dionysian is actually a suffering god as well. The Greeks knew the depth of suffering. The chorus in Greek tragedy represents the suffering. Later, as we said, Nietzsche resented and regretted this doting, this falling over Wagner, and this led to the break with the composer. When finally, after years of tribulation, debts, and contretemps of all sorts, Wagner presented the Ring in Bayreuth, he gave Nietzsche the singular honor to ride with him to the opera in his carriage. The great composer in his 70s and the still 27-year-old Nietzsche writing together for the Prima Serata. But Nietzsche couldn't stand it. He became literally sick, his eyes hurt, a massive headache became unbearable. Psychosomatic. He began to see Wagner's work, especially Parsifal, as a return to Christianity with its pity and redemption. He just couldn't bear it. And he left the theater after the first act. Of course, the vain Wagner never forgave him for this. For those interested in this Wagner-Nietzsche relationship, I would recommend this book, Suprahumanism, written by a seasoned diplomat for a major country, a European country, and who's now living in Central Europe. This book, Suprahumanism, I will read just 2 snippets, 2 small paragraphs from my preview to it. I was honored to be asked to write a preview to the book. So I'll read from here rather than here because of the ease of the font. The font is easier. Just 2 snippets from the prelude, because he calls it prelude, not forward or preface, prelude, Wagner and all that. Suprahumanism rests on 2 pillars, Wagner and Nietzsche. Contemporaries who were friends, notwithstanding their difference of age. Friends who then parted company and became intellectual enemies, with the young philosopher attacking the composer ferociously, but falling in love with his wife, Cosima. Now, it is easy to see an intimate relation between the works of Wagner and of Nietzsche. They constitute the 2 poles of the mythical field of suprahumanism. After they parted company, Nietzsche suffered greatly in distancing himself from the only man he had ever loved. However, This suffering arose from a kind of metaphysical jealousy. Nietzsche would have wished for the place in history accorded to Wagner. Nietzsche, the philosopher of perpetual becoming, he could not endure Wagner's expression of that same philosophy in music. Nietzsche established the philosophical myth of the Overman, the Übermensch. He explained its logic and created a language for it. However, the myth already existed in the form of Wagnerian opera. Nietzsche merely gave a name to what already existed in music. But this he could never admit. Nietzsche deliberately concealed the Wagnerian origins of his Zarathustrian vision. And now we come to an overview. We come to an overview of Nietzsche's major works, Con sorvolo, sorvolando, his major works that make him the last European, truly great European thinker. Pure, distilled, a blinding light, a man who set about questioning our morality, its origin, our present values, a revaluation of all values. The importance of Dionysius for Nietzsche. Dionysius, art and music, excess and intoxication, imperviousness to sadness. Every progress starts with a spark, an inspiration. As Picasso said, or used to put it, art is 2% inspiration and 98% perspiration. So Dionysius follows Apollo. You see, the idea is put into form, shape, order. In his Birth of a Tragedy, Nietzsche explains that there was another aspect to the Greek psyche, wild, untamed, cruel, and irrational. And he called this Dionysian, in contrast to the Apollonian, which produced the temples and the statuary of Athens. I will now read a short snippet, really short, from my Credo, a book for the very few, which tackles this Dionysian aspect of Nietzsche, you see. And I will read from here, because of the easier font. This short snippet is taken from chapter 15, Art is Dangerous. Art is dangerous. Art has been described by Nietzsche as that primal faculty of human fantasy by which our original and most fundamental experience is artistically expressed in images and apposite cadences. The way we feel and perceive the world. The ancient Greeks were never the serene spirits that the Hellenists once thought them to have been. A streak of insecurity and strong superstition ran through their culture. They were sensitive to suffering to an extreme degree, and all this made them deeply pessimistic. Silenus muttered that it was best for man never to have been born, and the next best thing to die quickly. Greek art then, like Greek religion, evolved to cope with the tragedy of life. It was a response to great suffering and as a means of making existence tolerable. It took two forms, Apollonian and Dionysian. Apollonian art is imagination. Dionysian art is intoxication. To the Greeks, the former, Apollonian, was but a thin veil covering the barbaric, dithyrambic undertones of their nature. Both serve the purpose of making life tolerable. Nietzsche, the anti-modern. Nietzsche can be called the only far-right or radical right political philosopher of modern times, accepted as mainstream by both the left and the right. Along with Marx and Freud, he towers over 19th, early 20th century thought, and he's the only one left standing of the three. His ferocious critique of Christianity, equality, altruism as a hidden form of a will to power, his advocating of force and the subjugating of the weak, his love for the elite as against the herd, his self-overcoming portrayed as a new religion, as a substitute to Christianity, all this makes Friedrich Nietzsche stand out. But stand out from what? From democracy, socialism, and communism. The three of them atheists, but adhere to Christian morality. Without a God, how can one be an atheist and yet go through life with that same Christian morality? For Nietzsche, it is sheer incoherence. Only we, the free spirits, beyond good and evil, we who have transvalued all values, only we live coherently. We, the strong, hammer in hand, philosophizing with a hammer, or a fine tuning fork. We forge new wings in order to fly higher. And the higher we soar, the smaller we seem to get in the eyes of those who cannot fly. Yes, Nietzsche hated Christianity. Nietzsche despised Christianity, out of which emerged democracy, socialism, and communism. With their equality and appeal to the downtrodden, the many too many, the flies in the marketplace who sting in all innocence. In Beyond Good and Evil, he defines Christianity as the revolt of the slaves. For Friedrich Nietzsche, there exists two types of morality, not one. Master morality and slave morality. The former represented by the great figures of antiquity, Periclean Greece, the Roman Caesars, and even Cesare Borgia. The slave morality, on the other hand, is the Judeo-Christian ethic born out of resentment, the psychological weapon of the priestly caste. Nietzsche mentions Thomas Aquinas and the pleasure, the good derive out of watching the torments of the damned. This angelic doctor exposes the rottenness, the sadistic resentment and vindictiveness of Christian morality. Slaves who are full of resentment, who instinctively hate and are jealous of the strong, the proud, and the truly good. And today, the slaughter of rivals and the conquest of the earth proceeds under the banners of universal brotherhood, democracy and socialism, fundamental rights, and so on. And all these sprang out of Christianity. Nietzsche interpreted nature's laws as they are. He did not make God a mirror image of ourselves. Nietzsche understood what nature's laws are: inexorable laws, immutable laws that can never change, laws that are beyond good and evil. But what does Nietzsche want? Nietzsche wants a new man to emerge, a man who lifts himself up from the duality of good and evil, a man whose values are beyond good and evil. However, Nietzsche wants that the present morality should be left for the masses to wallow in. The revaluation is only meant for the elite, the superman, leaders of the future of Europe. And what will be the new Bible for these supermen, our future leaders? Also sprach Zarathustra, the Bible for the new pagans. The death of God is the greatest event to befall man. We killed him. How are we to replace him now that man becomes the sole measure of the universe? Morality is not absolute anymore. We have to be our own guides. For present morality, any morality, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, they are all anti-natural, anti-life. They go against the instincts of life: pride, sex, selfishness, ambition to rule, to dominate the weak, to increase one's power. These moralities go against the source of everything. And the source of everything is the will to power. How? They are repressive. Cutting out one's eye or arm if it should lead you to sin. Blessed are the meek, the merciful. All natural instincts are defined as wrong in Christianity. And the same with Muslims. Get yourself a smart vest, see that it fits you beautifully, and blow yourself up. And the Buddhists, with their ascetic obsession, carried to excess. Look at the sun till you are blind. So what does Nietzsche augur for these supermen, these future philosopher kings? In my book Credo, on the very first page, I dedicated Nietzsche's words to these supermen. To those human beings who are of any concern to me, I wish suffering, desolation, ill-treatment, indignities. I have no pity for them. I wish them the only thing that can prove today whether one is worth anything or not, that one endures. Very good. At last, something interesting. Women. Was Nietzsche a misogynist? Like with everything else, Nietzsche is ambivalent regarding woman. But you can't exactly say he was a feminist either. He scorns women in innumerable instances, yet proposed to Lou Salome 3 times, each time being rejected. He doted on Cosima Wagner, 7 years older than himself. Nietzsche had a few affairs. It's not true he was a solitary and this. He had a few affairs, including an English lady whom he met in Italy, in Rapallo, I think. A few quotes regarding women. Women are not deep, yet they are not even shallow. Women, if they are masculine, display masculinity, they make men run away from them. But if they are feminine, exquisitely feminine, they run away from men, you see. Man displays will. Women, willingness. Are you visiting a woman? Do not forget your whip. But on the other hand, Nietzsche says, untroubled, scornful, outrageous, that is how wisdom wants us to be. She is a woman who never loves anyone but a warrior. In every real man, a child lies hidden that wants to play. Come, woman, discover the child in man. I wish I could read some more, but I have to stick to the allotted time. He can be exquisitely funny and witty, Nietzsche. Now, we come to the eternal recurrence, this great theory of Nietzsche. Eternal recurrence, life repeating itself endlessly, exactly as lived before, down to every detail, repeating itself millions, billions of times throughout eternity. But is it true? It does not matter whether it's true or not. But what if it is true? Who would accept such a repetition of life without any regrets? Only the Superman would embrace eternal recurrence. Was that life? Was that life? Yes, let's have it again. And so, every second becomes a striving, a self-overcoming. Every moment assumes an inestimable preciousness. And now we come to the central tenet of Nietzsche's philosophy, the will to power. Matter is representation of force, of energy. All is force against force, nothing more. Subjectively, this energy is a feeling, a drive, a will. Not a will to survive, Schopenhauer, but a will to power. Everything, every organism strives for increased power. All energy, all expressions of energy is a will to power. And will to power is a will to life. Life is nothing but a will to power. Will to survive, Schopenhauer, is the lowest form of this will to power. If an organism is threatened, then yes, there is this will to survival. But when not threatened, the same organism will strive to increase its power. This is not greed, it is growth. Will to power applies to humans, animals, plants, fungi, and all the rest. Man develops his health, his wealth, his status And these are all expressions of this will to power. Forcing one's power over those weaker through force, or imposing one's ideas, one's culture over others, this too is a will to power. Mergers, symbiotic relationships increase the power of the weak. Individual, family, group, tribe, nation, religion, ideology, imperium. One may mistakenly take Friedrich Nietzsche as a Darwinian. However, Nietzsche sees Darwin as reactive, an organism reacting to outside forces, outside threats, in order to survive naturally. Nietzsche is proactive, an organism acting to further its power over others. Will to power. Will to power and the individual. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will often be lonely and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning oneself. Every obstacle overcome is the strengthening of our will to power. An exam, pain, useful in that once overcome, we become stronger. It is this will to power that causes every action. Will to truth, to knowledge, originates from this will to power, because knowledge is power. Justice can serve as a vehicle of power for the weak in their search for ascendancy over the strong. Justice can serve that. We have atrocious laws designed specifically to curb the strong. Laws promulgated and pushed by the weak. As a feat of power makes for true love for the weak. True love, not hypocritical love, but true love for the weak. The Superman, overflowing with power, is graceful and helpful towards the weak. In fact, Nietzsche's last act was just such an expression of love for the weak, when in Turin he embraced that whipped horse and collapsed into madness. So his last act, Nietzsche, his last act before he went vegetable, it was such an expression of love towards the weak. Now, we come to one of Nietzsche's important books, his later works, Human, All Too Human. A book for free spirits, psychology more than philosophy, individualism, pursue your goal, throwing all of yourself into the effort. Find your own way, turn all this muck into gold, self-overcoming, self-making as a therapy to love. Human All Too Human, written in short, aphoristic bursts which leave the reader free to interpret. And this reminds me, a great writer, you see, when he writes in short aphoristic, they can be interpreted quite differently, even by the same reader. If one reads the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu, those 82 shorts stand beautiful. There's an edition which is out of print years ago, Jane English, with delightful illustrations. If one reads the Tao Te Ching today, one understands the stanza and says, oh yes, this makes sense. 5 years later, you read it, and you will understand it in a diametrically opposite way. The greatness of a writer, you see, the choice of language, always balanced on a razor edge. And Nietzsche writes like that. People who understand German can tell the beauty of the language, the puns, the puns of every sentence, you see, but can't go into that now. So, short aphoristic verse which leave the reader free to interpret. It attacks Christianity. Why? Because according to Nietzsche, Christianity killed Greek culture. The Renaissance could have offered a return to Roman and Greek culture, but Christianity killed this. Then came Wagner, and Nietzsche saw in him the savior of Greek culture and the antidote to Christianity. For Nietzsche, Christianity is simply Platonism for the people. Who can believe today in a Virgin Mary, or Jesus as the Son of God who comes here to save mankind just 2,000 years ago, when we've been here millions of years? I mean, it's passé, you see. But what is this master and slave morality? Masters were formerly barbarians who through strength conquered the more moral, refined societies. They subjugated them, learned from them, and themselves evolved into higher, stronger nations, Greece, Rome. The overman is not subject to the herd morality of equality. Such morality favors mediocrity. So, standing above morality is rising above the herd. Master morality creates values. Good is noble. Bad is despicable. Strength and weakness. The strong disdain the slave morality of the weak. And this morality of the weak arises, according to Nietzsche, out of resentment. Christianity. Finally, Genealogy of Morals. How morals came about. A critique of morality. From where, from which origins spring our present values? From the ancient Greeks, the Homeric period, aristocrats and slaves. Honor, strength, and victory in battle, taking revenge, a heroic spirit. Then the slaves revolted. Envy towards aristocrats, resentment. So the impotent slaves invented a new set of values: humility, pity, weakness. And these become good in Christianity. So innate aggressiveness, natural instincts are suppressed, internalized, and we turn against ourselves. We become guilt-ridden. So we must return to Homeric values, Goethe, Beethoven, Shakespeare, reordering, shaping, and creating a new morality. Rediscover lust, pillaging, overpowering others, overcome others, but most importantly, ourselves. Overcome guilt. Friedrich Nietzsche asks, what is the most beautiful thing in life? To live dangerously. Ernst Junger, seems to agree. War is valuable. War is life. We need danger in order to be strong. So if we try to eliminate our innate will to power, it will come out in other ways. Turning the other cheek becomes a sublimated will to power, and this often makes us sick. Like domesticated animals in cages, we become neurotic. We become Christians. And we come to believe in a God killing his only son in order to redeem us. On the other hand, Julius Evola, the great revolutionary conservative, has a different perception of the Superman. The true type of Superman is rather Olympian, a calm greatness which expresses an irresistible superiority, something which terrifies and at the same time compels veneration, something that prevails and disarms without fighting, establishing suddenly the feeling of a transcendent force, completely under control but totally capable of release, this wonderful and frightening sense of a transcendental experience. That's Evola. And to conclude, we come to Nietzsche's last salvo against present values based on Christianity. There's two books, The Gay Science and The Daybreak. Short book, The Daybreak. Morality, Christian morality, remains, even though God is dead. Buddha's shadow remained on the cave wall where he lodged for many years. For many years after his death, when Buddha died, his shadow remained on the innermost recesses of the cave for many years. And the same with Christianity. The same with the Christian God. He is dead. Yes, we see it all around us, all over Europe. The churches are empty. They've become the cemeteries of God. Young people don't want to know. But Christian morality prevails and rules supreme. And Nietzsche concludes, what is now decisive against Christianity is not our reason. We've tried to reason, it's no good. What is now decisive against Christianity is not our reason, but our taste. For Christianity is not only irrational, but distasteful. And with that Parthian shot, we leave Nietzsche gazing at sundown, promising the sun that he will be there the next morning at sunrise.